Today we're going to introduce you to an incredibly useful technique called the block-in. The block-in is a process of translating complex curves and contours into straight lines before attempting to draw all of the details found along the contours. The block-in is an excellent tool that will help you see the general pattern and structure of curves and contours before darkening them up. Now, for those of you who have been going through the Art and Science of Drawing series in order, you'll have noticed that there's a big emphasis on simplifying forms into their basic shapes first. The block-in technique bridges the gap between basic shapes and complex contours. The result will be volumetric drawings that are well constructed but also have a rich level of detail. So to understand how the block-in works and why it's so important, let's first take a look at some images and diagrams. To get a sense of how the block-in works and why it's necessary, let's take a look at today's subject, a pear. The most basic simplification of the largest shape contained in the pear is a circle. The top of the pear can be conceived of as a half-oval or egg shape. Although these simple shapes are a solid start, they're too simple and generic to turn into contours. Take a look at the outside contour of the pear. You'll notice that it's not evenly or consistently curved. In many areas, the contour almost seems to straighten out entirely, before making a quick turn and then straightening out again. For example, take a look at the top of the pear at the moment the stem emerges. The top of the pear is practically a straight line, as are the two lines going down from either side of the top. Instead of dealing with this as a complex curve, in the block-in phase of a drawing, we can simplify it into a series of straight lines. Hopefully you can see that these straight lines, in many ways, do a better job at describing the top of the pear than the half-oval did, and they give a sense of structure which might otherwise have been mistaken as a loose curve. Now, anytime you have two lines coming together to form an angle, you get what is called an apex. In this collection of three lines, we have one apex on the left of the top of the pear and one on the right. Later on in the drawing process, we can use these points to measure and angle sight our subject. For more information on measuring and angle sighting, please view the Measuring and Proportion course in the Art and Science of Drawing series. Next, take a look at the bottom left of the pear. Hopefully you can see that this section of the pear would also benefit by conceiving of it first as straight lines, and provide some structure for this complex curve. During the block-in demonstration you're about to see, I'll go around the pear translating each curve into a straight line until the complex curvature of the outside contour has been entirely blocked in, providing us a scaffolding on top of which we can craft the contour we eventually want seen by a viewer. Let's start this drawing by first simplifying the pear into its most basic shapes. A circle for the large lower section of the pear and a half-oval for the smaller top. And finally, working our way from the biggest to the smallest forms, a rectangular shape for the stem. Hopefully, you can see that this simple collection of shapes immediately registers as a pear in the mind. But if we were to just darken the contour created by these basic shapes, it would produce a drawing that was too simple and uninteresting. So now, you'll see me use the block-in technique to help turn this drawing of a generic pear into a drawing that captures the unique qualities of this specific pear. I'll begin by blocking in the angles that seem the most obvious to me. There's no one right way to transition a drawing from basic shapes to the block-in, but as always, we want to work our way from the biggest and most obvious elements down to the smaller and more subtle details. And, as always, I can assume that this first attempt at the block-in will need to be altered and refined. Translating complex curves into straight lines and angles gives the curves much more structure, and the drawing begins to reveal the unique qualities of this pear. Take a look at how the very top of the pear seems to slant downward toward the right. Next, take a look at how the large lower section of the pear seems to bulge out on the right. This is no longer a drawing of a generic pear, The block-in has succeeded in laying a foundation that will allow us to craft a contour specific to this individual pair. One of my favorite things about the block-in technique is that an apex is created every time two angles come together. Every apex has a specific distance and direction from every other apex on the form. You can begin to measure these by using your pencil to carefully extract an angle from your subject and carefully transfer it to your drawing. By doing this, you can make sure that the angle created between any 2 points on your subject matches the angle between the corresponding 2 points in your drawing. The more evaluations like this you make, the more accurate your drawing will become. Remember, it's up to you as an artist to decide how many iterations you want your drawing to go through. Once you've made all of the refinements that you feel are necessary, you're ready to draw in the contour. It's important to note that during my demonstration drawings, I'm usually drawing much darker during the initial phases of the drawing process than I would if I were alone in my studio. The reason, of course, is that so you, the student, can more easily see the drawing. If you feel your drawing has gotten too dark, feel free to clean it up with an eraser. I would recommend using a kneaded eraser like this one. Kneaded erasers work just like silly putty. Begin by pressing it down on the paper over the lines that you want lightened. By doing this, the eraser will lift any loose pigment on the page. It's important to do this before scrubbing with the eraser so that the loose pigment doesn't smear all over your drawing. After blotting and lifting away any excess pigment, I can then use my eraser to scrub around the form to clean up any smudges or loose pigment left over from the blotting process. Even though the drawing is much lighter, you'll notice that the block-in is still evident on the page. This way, we can still use it while crafting our contours, but it won't be noticeable to a viewer when we're done with the drawing. Now I'm ready to begin crafting the contour of the pair. These are the first lines I've drawn that I actually want to be seen by a viewer. Instead of the continuous and even contour line that we used for yesterday's contour drawings, I'm crafting the outside contour of the pair in pieces, trying to be sensitive to each of the subtle shifts of the contour. The resulting outside contour is not a generic line. It is derived from the specific attributes of this individual pair we've been working with. The block-in method has allowed us to first lay in a light foundation that served as a scaffolding for our contour line. Although we won't be dealing with shading, I do want to note that the block-in technique works extremely well as an initial way of separating the lights and darks on your subject. The main difference is that the lines used to block in the shadow are soft-edged instead of hard-edged. And just like the block-in process you just saw demonstrated, the soft block-in line for the shadow can be refined until the desired level of detail has been achieved. Now that you have a sense of how the block-in technique works on a single subject, let's take a look at how you can use it when drawing multiple subjects. To begin, you'll want to simplify your subject down into its most basic shapes, in this case, a series of circles and ovals. Before beginning the block-in process, it's important that you take whatever time you need to get these big basic shapes in the right place and at the right size. Once you're satisfied, it's time to begin the block-in process. Now, before I begin blocking in the contours of the individual forms, you'll see me use a technique called enveloping. In order to create an envelope around my subjects, I'll go around the subjects and analyze the angles between the furthest points of all of the subjects together. This is a great way to double-check to make sure that each individual object is at the right size and in the right place in relationship to the other objects. While you're creating your envelope, if you find that any of the individual objects are out of place, make any necessary adjustments. Similar to what you saw me do with the pair, you can compare the angle between any two apices created by your envelope. The angle in your drawing should exactly match up to the angle taken from your subject. For more information on angle sighting, please review the Measuring and Proportion section of the Art and Science of Drawing series. Enveloping your subjects is a great technique to build into your block-in process. It will ensure that not only each individual subject is properly drawn, but that all of the objects are in proper relationship to one another. With our envelope blocked in, we can now begin blocking in the contours of our individual subjects. It's important to note that the block-in technique is not equally useful for all subjects. For example, the large oval that I've used to draw the picture already works very well to describe the long, steady curve. However, an examination of the lemon reveals that many of the contours are actually pretty close to straight lines. The block-in technique will really come in handy while trying to draw the complex curves of the mouth of the picture. How far you take the block-in process is entirely up to you. Remember, its main function is to provide a structured scaffolding upon which you will build your more detailed and complex contour lines. Once you're ready, you can begin using darker lines to draw in the complex curves and contours that you actually want seen by a viewer. So what I'm proposing in this lesson is a 3-step process to arrive at contour drawings. The first step in the process is to translate any form, no matter how complex, into its basic shapes. This will usually be circles, triangles, ovals, and, if you're comfortable, translating those into simple volumes like cylinders, spheres, or cubes. The second step of the process involves the block-in, when you're translating all of the complex curves of the contour first into straight lines. This will give your drawing a sense of structure, and it'll help your drawings from being too generic. The block-in technique will help make sure that you're capturing all of the unique qualities of the contour of the specific object that you're drawing. It'll help bridge the gap between basic shapes and complex contours by providing a scaffolding upon which you can draw more complex and detailed lines. And the third step in this process is contour drawing, where you're going to use dark lines to draw all of the details you find in the contour. Once you have a structure and scaffolding provided by the basic shapes in the block-in, you can detail the contour using the same kinds of observational skills that you practiced yesterday. This will allow you to keep your eyes on the object much more when you're actually drawing the contour. That way, you can spend your time observing all of the tiny details of the contour on the object itself and only look back at your drawing every once in a while, confident that your scaffolding will keep you in place and your drawing in proportion. So here's your project for today. You're going to select 3 objects and use this block-in technique for each of them. Fruits and vegetables are great for this kind of project because they simplify into basic shapes, but they also provide a lot of irregularities for you to practice this block-in technique. If you're looking for an extra challenge, after drawing each of these objects individually, try grouping them together so you can practice the enveloping technique. Well, have fun with your project today. I will see you here tomorrow when you're going to learn all about line quality and how to use expressive mark making to really get the most out of your contour drawings.